This year's budget has received a welcome boost with higher than expected tax revenue collections. The Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana announced Treasury received over 180 billion rand more than originally budgeted for at the start of last year. Let's discuss this with SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter. Mr. Kieswetter, thank you for your time. We'll get to the additional revenue and what many are calling a windfall in a moment, but I wanted to just from the tax proposals perspective, I wanted to start there and say, consumers will be relieved that, things such as the levy on fuel, petrol and diesel is not going up. Businesses that use fuel extensively will also be relieved about that. The road accident fund levy is also not going up. As I saw the tax relief measures, and if I'm not mistaken, they come up to some, 5.2 billion rand, 5.2 billion rand. The consumers and people like that will be happy. And I thought about you and I said, Mr. Kieswetter won't be too happy. What are the implications of all of these tax relief measures for you in terms of keeping up with revenue collection?
Thanks, Tulas. We have always said very strongly, in line with the Minister's message, that we have reached a point of inflection where additional taxes won't necessarily yield additional revenue because of the unintended impact on tax compliance. And right now, we are struggling with unacceptable levels of tax compliance. And if we do our work properly and collect the taxes that are due and do so efficiently, then we remove the temptation and sometimes the necessity for the minister to consider any tax hikes. One cannot rule that out in the future, as the minister himself had said. But right now, we are banking the more positive than originally expected recovery in the economy. And secondly, we are seeing the encouraging turnaround of the machinery of SARS to just do its work and to ensure that the taxes that are due is in fact collected. And if we have time, I can share some of that detail with you.
Yeah, please do, because I think it's important in that if we're saying that additional taxes will not improve our revenue situation, it's all about collecting effectively what we are supposed to be collecting. I think we should expand a bit more on those efficiencies that are being improved.
So let me talk about the areas where since around about 2014, the organization began to experience a significant decline in performance. In that time, we had lost over 2,000 skilled employees in areas of where we require technical competencies in customs, in tax, in debt collection, in the large business center areas. And we also really disrupted the modernization journey where the systems of SARS had to be invested in. That is apart from the decline in employee morale and distrust and the softer issues. Thankfully, we are now on a recovery. We have a long way to go, so let's not declare victory. But what are we seeing? We are seeing at least a more engaged workforce, and we are seeing targeted areas that I can share with you. One, for example, is in debt collection. Let me say to you, we have a long way to go. But the debt that SARS ultimately collects, and these are taxpayers who are not willingly handing over it. We have resolved in this year so far 2.4 million cases, and that means a case that has to be worked by a human being. Issued 24,000 letters of final demands, issued 5,500 civil judgments, appointed 306,000 third-party collecting agencies. That gives you a sense of the work we have done, and that work has yielded over 47 billion rand. In another area of huge risk for SARS is refund management. many taxpayers and criminals, I might add, see the refund system as a way to get access into the coffers of government. In VAT, we have a significant area of VAT fraud. Just this year, we had 652,000 cases where people claim that a refund is due. And through the verification work we have done on a large number of that, we have been able to prevent 30 billion of unlawful refunds to flow out. In the personal income system, that's almost 8 billion. So in total, through working with data and artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, as well as human effort, we have just this year prevented 55 billion rand from flowing out of. So if you add all of this up, you can see where the 182 billion comes from. Outstanding returns have yielded 2.5 billion. Criminal investigations have yielded over 6.5. Our customs enforcement have yielded 5.8 billion. So these are then the pockets of effort that translates into additional revenue. And then we add about another 60 billion from the economy, and that gets us to the overperformance of about 182 billion.
So in outlining those measures, you've also, Commissioner, explained a bit more about that additional 182 billion rand collected in comparison to the estimates of February last year, 62 billion rand when compared to what was estimated during the medium-term expenditure framework delivery in October last year. But one of the things that I'd like you to talk to, though, is that the narrative around that additional revenue collected is that it has to do with the commodity cycle and commodity prices doing well. We saw in the second half, and it comes out in the minister's speech, that tended to sort of slow down. Are you concerned that this is too narrow a stream of revenue? I know you've outlined the other measures you just outlined now, but will we need other sectors to really kick into high gear to sustain the better revenue collection? And are you seeing any signs of that happening at the moment?
So let's just break that down further, Tulas. We saw a increase in revenue, in profit, and therefore tax take from specifically what we call the PGM sector, platinum and gold mining and quarrying. That has seen a significant increase of about 60%, and just that is driven by commodity pricing cycles and exchange rate, so that doesn't go into the base. It is on top of everything else that we have collected. But then we've also seen a correction and of pent-up demand that has translated into a 30% uplift in manufacturing. That we can go into the base. We've seen a restoration of household expenditure, and that translates to a 23% uplift in retail. We have seen logistics and communication year-on-year uplift of 22%. So that 60 billion comes from that, and the component that comes from the commodity cycle, that doesn't go into the base, but everything else goes into the base. Then the effort component of SARS, that goes into our base, and we have seen a year-on-year improvement of compliance revenue of about almost 19%. That goes into the base. And we are encouraged and cautiously optimistic that that which goes into the base will depend on consistent compliance work by SARS, and that is where the longer-term sustainable revenue performance will come from. And as we then continue to rebuild SARS and to invest in technology, in artificial intelligence, bring on more capable skills, I still am persuaded that the lowest cost revenue for the South African government is having an effective and efficient SARS that can collect the tax revenues that are due, and that also then takes off pressure on the Minister of Finance to raise additional taxes. So for me, it is a systemic issue and not just the one-trick pony of placing reliance on commodity prices.
So the bottom line from your side then, Commissioner, I mean, I'm looking through some of these proposals in terms of the various tax categories, personal income tax brackets and rebates being adjusted by 4.5%, and basically, you know, the shift in the annual tax-free threshold that you know all about from 87,300 to 91,250 per year. The whole thing that there'll be no increase in the fuel levy on petrol and diesel, but also importantly, the reduction of the corporate tax rate from 28% to 27%. You saying to me, this is the bottom line from you, if I understand you correctly, you are not concerned that this will lead to a revenue shortfall going forward because efficiencies are coming through in other areas and operations of SARS?
Absolutely. And in fact, Tulas, the gain from a more effective SARS more than adequately compensate for the relief measures. 5.2 billion of relief, which really, if you think about it, most of that is just to allow taxpayers and rates to be adjusted in line with inflation. But we've also seen on the wage front, even though we have had a contraction from 14.7 million jobs to 14.3 million jobs, we've seen wages increase by 8% in the wage bill, and that translates into additional personal income taxes. That 8% uplift comes from companies who in the previous year did not pay increases in bonuses, who now are more confident, have begun to lift up their wage bill, reward employees for performance, and that goes into the base and will retain in the future. So what we are saying is, yes, there are swings and roundabouts, but the net effect can still be positive if we do our work properly and if South Africans honor the obligations and comply.
Lastly, the illicit economy. What is the message today, Commissioner, given that, you know, we suffered setbacks over a number of years in terms of our ability to counter the illicit economy, which costs us quite a lot? What, in practical terms, can you report at this point in trying to avoid revenue leakages through the illicit economy?
The first admission by all of us is we have a long way to go. Sadly, our country has become a country where corruption and fraud and economic crime has become a disease. But we are encouraged. Let me share with you, in the area of syndicated crime, that's the kind of crime that Zondo reports on. You've heard that last month, the National Prosecuting Authority, working with SARS, we have arrested, and they've had their first court appearing, of the failed Estina Dairy project, where there was a director of the company and a Gupta associate who have been arrested, and they will now stand trial. We have finalized we have finalized 220 criminal investigations and handed that over to the NPA. We have seen this year 113 successful convictions. We only had 3 acquittals. In those convictions were 43 PPE cases, of which 11 have been tried and convicted. So we're seeing us biting this huge elephant bit by bit. In terms of our syndicated crime, we have also completed 650 investigations, and through that raised almost 12 billion rand. In terms of customs, we have had a number of tax inquiries. We've raised over 300 million rand of value. We have confiscated cigarettes of the value of 430 million. So little pockets of recovery are slowly beginning to get the foundation on which we will build. So the tide has turned. Too early to declare victory, but there are definitely signs that, by the way, 8 of those cases from the tobacco tobacco and cigarette fraud have also been referred as criminal cases to the NPA. So I would love to go faster, but we are constrained by working within the resources we have, but we are slowly recovering, we are slowly reinstating those resources, and South Africans will see a steady and progressive success rate as far as that is concerned.
All right, Commissioner Edward Kieswetter, thank you for your time, and that's exactly what South Africans would love to see, so that we continue to have better revenue collection, which also assists all of us going forward in terms of the priorities that we have as a nation.